Hello. Um, so I had disabilities and physical differences accommodations. So let's get started. This is just a table of contents. I can identify the appropriate accommodations for students with disabilities. I can recognize the differences between an IEP and a 504 plan. I can determine if a child is in need of a special accommodation and take action to implement them. And I can list common accommodations for students with disabilities. So these are just the 4 objectives that we are going to go over today. Number 1, I can identify the appropriate accommodations for students with disabilities. So, what is an accommodation anyway? An accommodation is something that is implemented into a classroom that assists a child with a disability or a physical difference. An accommodation can look like allowing noise-canceling headphones, extended time on assignments and assessments, and use of a quiet corner. But most importantly, it's about providing a welcome environment for every student. So these are just a list of appropriate accommodations for different disabilities. ADHD, or Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder, is a disability where students have trouble staying still, have trouble staying focused, organized, just things like that. So an aide being present in the classroom can help students stay on task. Extra time on tests and assessments can make sure that your kids are having all the time that they need to complete their assessments and be successful, and being allowed to move around. So if a student decides, hey, I kind of want to do this worksheet in the floor or on the wall, as long as it's appropriate for the classroom setting that you're in, then you can absolutely do that. Autism. Autism is a disorder where students can get overstimulated very easily. They like having things a certain way. So noise-canceling headphones can help them stay on task, and an aide to be present to make sure that they don't get overstimulated. And a schedule posted clearly in the classroom can just be as simple as the student knowing when lunch is, when break is, when their specials are. Autistic children love routine. And use of a quiet corner in case that they get overstimulated. So anxiety is similar to autism, but has a lot of differences from it. Children with anxiety can just get overwhelmed very easily. They may not want to talk in front of people, things like that. So use of noise-canceling headphones can, again, like autistic children, help students stay on task. Use of fidgets like Pop-Its or the Peapods, Wacky Tracks, things like that, and allowed to leave class when needed. So sometimes students just can get a little bit overwhelmed, and letting them leave class to take a trip down the hallway to the bathroom or to the guidance counselor's office can make all of that difference. And now we're on to dyslexia. Dyslexia is a disorder where students may get their words mixed up or their letters, and they can see things the opposite way that they're supposed to be. So this is not completely restricted to reading. There is a math version of this, and that's called dyscalculia. So spelling checks are something that you need to do with every child with dyslexia. And this is not something that you need to do out of malice for the student. This is just to make sure that they know what's going on. Read aloud technology is very important because whenever the student is reading and things look a little bit weird, whenever the read aloud technology is also being read, they know exactly what that word is saying. As for highlighting important information, sometimes with worksheets, there's just a bunch of stuff on there and you don't know what's really the directions. So just highlighting that for that student can let them focus on exactly what they need to read. And finger pointing to every word. So let's say that we have this can of Pringles right here. If this were a sentence, we would say Pringles, salt, and vinegar. And you can do that with any kind of thing. Number 2, I can recognize the differences between an IEP and a 504 plan. So this is just a little chart for you guys to be able to notice the differences between an IEP and a 504 plan. So for an IEP, the involvement and progress of the child with a disability in the general curriculum, all related services for which the child qualifies, appropriate educational accommodations necessary for the child to be successful, the child's present levels of educational performance, and measurable and annual goals and objectives for the child's education. So an IEP is a classroom-specific plan that allows students with accommodations get exactly what they need in the classroom. As for a 504 plan, the responsibility to not discriminate against individuals with disabilities applies to all school personnel. In addition to students with disabilities, parents and employees also cannot be discriminated against. General education programs and staff have the primary responsibility for the implementation of Section 504. Staff from special education may be consulted, but they do not have the responsibility for implementation of the accommodations for the student. Section 504 plans provide accommodations, not modifications, and the accommodations required by Section 504 apply to the entire school and extend to parents and visitors to events. So the 504 plan is an actual law that spreads out along a lot of things other than just in the classroom. Number 3, I can determine if a child is in need of a special accommodation and take action to implement them. So let's think about this hypothetical situation. What kind of accommodation should this student have? And then I'm going to have a surprise question at the end. A student is having immense trouble reading basic sentences. They claim that the words in the sentences are changed around, they write their letters backwards or out of order, and they show a general disinterest in reading. What should you do? The answer is, the student should be given spelling checks, allow them extra time to complete reading assignments, and they should read with their finger tracing the words. So, what disability would this be? It would be dyslexia. And number 4, I can list common accommodations for students with disabilities. So these are just lists of accommodations for different disabilities: ADHD, extra time on tests, instruction and assignments tailored to the child, positive reinforcement and feedback, using technology to assist with tasks, allowing breaks or time to move around, and environment to limit distraction and have help staying organized. Autism. Clearly established and ordered routines, warning and preparation when changes are anticipated, planning and practicing of communication strategies and social routines, earplugs and noise-canceling headsets in hallways or lunchroom, quiet area to where the student can take a timeout if necessary, written schedules and graphic organizers, instructions are written and rather than auditory, and word processing for writing and computer use, as well as a note taker. Anxiety. Alternative assignment to oral presentations or submit previously taped presentation. One-on-one discussions instead of in-class participation. Assign work groups instead of having students choose their own groups. Discuss concerns in private meetings instead of in class. And let the student know that their turn to read out loud or answer a question is coming up. For dyslexia, verbal instructions, repetition of instructions, text and instructions in audio format, larger print, and less items per page. Thanks.